The night of my engagement was supposed to be one of the happiest nights of my life. My fiancé Emeka and I were sitting at the center of a long dining table while our family celebrated around us. The house was full of laughter, clinking glasses, and excited voices. My mother had spent the whole day cooking, and my father kept walking around proudly telling relatives, "My daughter is finally getting married." Everyone looked happy. My cousins were taking pictures, my aunties were gossiping softly in the corner, and my parents looked like the proudest parents in the room. Emeka sat beside me with his arm around my chair, smiling politely at everyone. He looked calm, confident, exactly like the man I thought I knew. Every few minutes someone would ask us questions about the wedding, the future, or when we planned to start a family. I kept smiling, answering, and trying to enjoy the moment. After all, this was the night our families were officially joining together. But as the dinner went on, something small started to bother me. My younger sister Chioma kept finding reasons to sit close to Emeka. First I thought nothing of it. She laughed loudly at his jokes, even the ones that were not that funny. She leaned toward him while talking, sometimes touching his arm like they had known each other forever. Once or twice I caught them sharing a quick glance that lasted just a little longer than normal. It was probably nothing, I told myself. Chioma had always been friendly with everyone, and Emeka was about to become part of our family, so of course they needed to get along. Still, something about their body language felt different. Too comfortable. Too familiar. At one point I noticed them whispering while everyone else was busy arguing about wedding dates. When they realized I was looking, they both suddenly stopped and smiled like nothing had happened. A strange feeling settled quietly in my chest. For a moment I wondered if I was imagining things. Maybe I was just nervous about the wedding. Maybe I was overthinking a perfectly happy night. So I pushed the feeling away, smiled for the photos, and held Emeka's hand under the table. I had no idea that the small, uneasy feeling in my heart that night was the first warning of a betrayal that would change everything. A few weeks after the engagement dinner, life slowly returned to normal. At least that's what I thought. I was busy with work, wedding planning, and constant phone calls with relatives who had suddenly become very interested in my life. Everyone kept asking about dresses, venues, and dates. My mother talked about the guest list almost every day. From the outside, everything looked perfect, but something about Emeka had started to change. First it was small things. He replied to my messages later than usual. Our phone calls became shorter. Sometimes when I asked what he was doing, he would just say, "Work is stressful lately." I tried to be understanding. Weddings can be overwhelming for men too, I told myself. Maybe he was just nervous about the future. Still, the strange feeling from that engagement dinner quietly returned. One evening, Emeka called and asked if we could meet. His voice sounded serious. Not loving, not excited, just cold and distant. We decided to meet at a small cafe we used to visit when we first started dating. I arrived early, thinking maybe he wanted to talk about the wedding plans. But the moment he walked in, I felt it. Something was wrong. He didn't hug me. He didn't smile the way he usually did. He just sat down across from me and kept staring at the table like he was preparing to say something difficult. My heart started beating faster. After a long silence, he finally spoke. "Amara, I don't think we should get married." For a second I thought I heard him wrong. "What do you mean?" I asked quietly, trying to keep my voice steady. He sighed and rubbed his hands together. "I've been thinking about this for a while. I don't want to continue the engagement." My mind went blank. Just weeks ago we were celebrating our future in front of both families. Now he was suddenly ending everything like it meant nothing. "Why?" I asked. He hesitated for a moment. Then he said the words that felt like a knife straight through my chest. "There's someone else." The cafe suddenly felt smaller. The noise around us faded as my ears started ringing. "Someone else?" I repeated. He nodded slowly. "Yes." For a moment I thought maybe he had met someone at work. Maybe some random woman I had never heard about. But then he said the name that made my entire world stop. "Chioma." I just stared at him. My brain refused to understand what he had just said. "My sister," I whispered. Emeka didn't even look ashamed. He just nodded again like he was talking about something normal. We didn't plan it, he said. It just happened. We realized we have stronger feelings for each other. I felt like the ground had disappeared under my feet. All the small moments suddenly came rushing back into my mind. The laughing at dinner, the long glances, the whispers. The strange feeling I had ignored that night. It wasn't my imagination. They had already been getting close while I was sitting right beside them. My hands started shaking. You're leaving me for my own sister. Emeka looked uncomfortable but didn't deny it. Yes. That single word shattered everything I thought I knew about love, family, and loyalty. In that moment I realized something painful. The two people I trusted the most had been betraying me behind my back. After Emeka left me sitting alone in that cafe, I didn't even remember how I got home. My head felt heavy, like my mind was refusing to accept what had just happened. My fiancé, the man who promised to marry me, had just told me he was in love with my own sister. For the entire night I kept thinking the same thing. Maybe Chioma didn't know. Maybe Emeka misunderstood something. Maybe there was still some explanation. But deep down I already knew the truth. The next day I decided to go to my parents' house. I needed answers. I needed someone in my family to tell me that this was wrong, that what Chioma and Emeka had done was a betrayal. When I walked into the living room, I immediately felt the strange tension in the air. My mother and father were sitting quietly on the couch. Chioma was there too, looking nervous but not exactly guilty. No one looked surprised to see me. That was the first moment my heart dropped. You already know, don't you? Asked slowly. My mother sighed like she had been waiting for this conversation. Amara, sit down, she said gently. I stayed standing. My hands were shaking. How long has this been going on? I asked, looking directly at Chioma. She didn't answer. She just looked down at the floor. Before she could say anything, my mother spoke. Listen, these things happen sometimes. I blinked in confusion. What things? Love, my mother said calmly. Feelings change. People fall in love with unexpected people. For a moment I couldn't even process what she was saying. Mom, that's my fiancé, I said. And that's my sister. My father cleared his throat like he was trying to end the tension. Amara, you need to calm down, he said. There's no need to create a big family drama over this. Family drama. My chest tightened. So you're okay with this? Asked, my voice shaking. You're okay with my sister stealing my fiancé? My mother quickly shook her head. Don't use that word. No one stole anyone. Emeka made his own choice. I stared at her in disbelief. Mom, they betrayed me. A few days after that painful conversation, I was still trying to process everything. My engagement was over. My fiancé had chosen my sister. And somehow, my own parents were acting like it was just a small misunderstanding that would pass with time. Then my mother called me one evening. Her voice sounded unusually cheerful. Amara, we're having a small family dinner this weekend, she said. Everyone will be there. You should come. For a moment I hesitated. I wasn't ready to face anyone yet. But a small part of me hoped maybe this dinner was their way of fixing things. Maybe my parents had realized how wrong the situation was. Maybe they wanted to apologize or talk things through. So I agreed. When I arrived at my parents' house that night, the place was already full of relatives. My aunts, uncles, and cousins were sitting around the living room, chatting and laughing like nothing unusual had happened. The smell of food filled the house, just like the night of my engagement dinner. But this time something felt very different. The moment I walked in, conversations slowly became quieter. Some relatives gave me awkward smiles. Others quickly looked away like they didn't know how to react. That strange tension in the room made my stomach tighten. Then I saw them. Chioma and Emeka were sitting together on the main couch. Not just sitting close. His arm was resting behind her shoulders like they had been a couple for years. Chioma was wearing a bright dress and smiling confidently while talking to my aunt. For a second I couldn't move. It felt like I was watching someone else's life instead of my own. My mother quickly walked over to me with a big smile. Amara, you made it. Come, everyone is already here. I looked at her in disbelief. Why are they here? I whispered. She lowered her voice slightly but still kept that calm expression. Because they're part of the family. Before I could respond, my father suddenly stood up and tapped his glass to get everyone's attention. The room went quiet. I just want to say something quickly, he announced proudly. As you all know, our family has gone through some changes recently. My heart started pounding. He gestured toward Chioma and Emeka. But sometimes life surprises us in unexpected ways. We're happy to see that Chioma and Emeka have found love with each other. Several relatives forced polite smiles and light claps. I felt like the air had been knocked out of my lungs. They weren't fixing the situation. They were celebrating it. I suddenly realized why they had invited me. Not to support me. Not to apologize. They wanted me there so I could quietly accept what had happened. So I could sit there and pretend everything was normal. Around the room, relatives kept glancing at me with uncomfortable expressions. Some looked sympathetic. Others avoided eye contact completely. Meanwhile, Chioma sat there with a proud smile on her face, holding Emeka's hand like she had won some kind of prize. At one point she even looked directly at me and gave a small, confident smile. That moment hurt more than anything else. Because in that room full of family, I had never felt more alone in my life. After that humiliating dinner, something inside me changed. For days I barely spoke to anyone in my family. I stopped answering their calls and messages. At first my mother sent a few texts telling me not to be dramatic, but eventually even those messages stopped. To them, the situation was already solved. Chioma had Emeka. The family was happy, and I was expected to quietly disappear from the story. What none of them realized was that while they were busy choosing sides, I had already built a life they knew nothing about. Years before Emeka ever proposed to me, I had started working on something quietly. While everyone in my family believed I had a normal office job, I had actually been building my own tech company from the ground up. Started small. Just me, my laptop, and a tiny rented workspace that barely had enough room for 2 desks. I spent nights coding, planning, and learning everything I could about business and technology. Some days I barely slept. Other days I questioned whether I was crazy for even trying. My family never paid attention to those long nights. To them, I was just working late. They never asked what I was really doing. Slowly, the small idea started turning into something real. I created a company called Horizon Dynamics Group. At first it was just a small tech solutions startup. We worked on software systems for companies that wanted to modernize their operations. The first contract we signed felt like a miracle. Then another client came. And another. Within a few years, the company started growing faster than I ever expected. We expanded into different areas of technology, data systems, digital infrastructure, and corporate software platforms. Investors began to notice us. Large companies started partnering with us. Before I even realized it, Horizon Dynamics had grown into something huge. We opened multiple offices in different cities. Our team grew from just 2 people to hundreds, then thousands of employees. Entire departments were created. New projects launched every year. Today, thousands of people wake up every morning and go to work for Horizon Dynamics Group. And I'm the one who built it. But the strange part is, my own family had no idea. To them, I was still just Amara, the quiet daughter with a regular job. The one who got engaged, got dumped, and was now expected to move on with her life. I never corrected them. Whenever they asked about work, I gave simple answers. I never mentioned the company, the employees, or the success. I never told them that the business world was starting to recognize my name. Sometimes I wondered what they would say if they knew the truth. If they knew that while they were busy humiliating me at family dinners, I had been building an empire in silence. The strange part of this whole story is something my family never realized. While they were busy judging my life and telling me to move on, they were all waking up every morning and going to work at a company that was connected to me in a way they could never imagine. My father had worked for years at a large corporate firm called Novatech Solutions. It was a big, well-known company with offices in several cities. My father often talked proudly about it at family gatherings. "This is a serious multinational company," he would say. Not like those small startups that disappear overnight. My mother also worked there in the administration department. She liked telling people how stable the company was and how good the benefits were. And after my engagement with Emeka ended, something even more ironic happened. Emeka eventually got a job there too. I remember hearing about it through my cousin one day. "Did you hear?" she said. "Emeka just got hired at Novatech. Your parents helped recommend him." I only nodded and said, "Oh, that's good for him." But inside, I almost laughed at the strange twist of fate. Because what none of them knew was that Novatech Solutions was not actually an independent company anymore. 3 years earlier, Horizon Dynamics Group had quietly acquired a majority stake in Novatech. It was part of our expansion plan. Instead of changing the company name, we kept everything the same on the surface so operations could continue smoothly. To the employees, nothing looked different. They still saw the same logo on the building. They still reported to the same managers. They still believed they worked for a powerful international corporation. But behind the scenes, Novatech was now one of the biggest subsidiaries under Horizon Dynamics, which meant something very simple. Every major decision about that company came from my office. The budgets, the leadership changes, the expansion projects, the strategic direction, all of it ultimately passed through my approval. In other words, the company my parents proudly talked about at dinner, the one Emeka believed would build his career, was actually part of the business empire I had built in silence. Sometimes I imagined what their faces would look like if they ever discovered the truth. The daughter they told to move on, the daughter they treated like she had nothing left, was technically their boss. But I never said a word, not because I was afraid. I was simply waiting for the right moment, and soon, that moment was going to arrive in a way none of them would ever forget. A few months after everything happened, Horizon Dynamics started preparing for one of the biggest corporate events in the company's history. It was meant to celebrate the company's rapid growth and the success of several new international projects we had recently completed. The event was going to be huge. Executives from different branches, investors, senior managers, and hundreds of employees from our subsidiary companies were invited. One of those companies, of course, was Novatech Solutions, the same company where my parents and Emeka worked. But this event had something special planned. For years, Horizon Dynamics had operated in a very quiet and strategic way. Most employees knew the company had a founder and CEO, but very few had ever seen me in person. I preferred staying out of the spotlight while building the company. This time, however, my executive team had a different idea. They wanted the founder to finally appear publicly at the event, so an announcement was sent out across all departments and subsidiary companies. Special guest appearance. The founder and CEO of Horizon Dynamics Group will attend the annual corporate celebration. The message spread quickly through emails, company newsletters, and internal chat groups. Employees began talking about it everywhere. Who was the mysterious founder? Some people believed it was an older billionaire who preferred staying hidden. Others guessed it might be an international tech investor who had quietly built the company. The rumors kept growing. At Novatech Solutions, the excitement was just as big. My father apparently talked about it constantly at home. My cousin later told me he was very excited to attend the event. "This is a huge opportunity," he had said. "Meeting the founder of Horizon Dynamics could be very important for our careers." My mother was also excited. She even started planning what she would wear to the event, treating it like a very important social gathering. And Emeka, he was even more eager. From what I heard, he kept telling his co-workers that meeting the founder might open doors for promotions or new opportunities inside the company. None of them had the smallest idea what was actually waiting for them. They thought they were simply attending an important corporate celebration. They believed they were about to meet a powerful business leader they had never seen before. What they didn't know was that the person they were so excited to meet was someone they already knew very well. And when that moment finally came, their entire understanding of the past few months was about to change forever. The night of the corporate event finally arrived, and the entire convention hall was filled with people. Hundreds of employees from different branches of Horizon Dynamics and Novatech Solutions had gathered inside the huge ballroom. The place looked elegant and expensive, bright chandeliers hanging from the ceiling, large screens placed around the hall, and rows of neatly arranged tables. Everyone was dressed in formal clothes, talking, laughing, and taking pictures. Soft music played in the background while waiters moved around serving drinks. It looked more like a luxury gala than a simple corporate meeting. Somewhere in that crowd were my parents and Emika. They were sitting with a group of Novatech employees at one of the large tables near the middle of the hall. My father looked proud, adjusting his tie and observing the room like he belonged there. My mother kept looking around excitedly, whispering comments about how grand the event was. Emika looked confident too. He was talking to a few co-workers, probably discussing the company and what opportunities this event might bring. None of them had any idea what was about to happen. After a while, the lights in the hall slowly began to dim. The conversations across the room started to quiet down as everyone turned their attention toward the large stage at the front. A spotlight appeared, and the host of the event walked up to the microphone. "Good evening, everyone," he said with a bright smile. The room filled with applause. He spent a few minutes talking about the company's achievements, the rapid growth of Horizon Dynamics, and the important partnerships that had made the company so successful. Large screens around the hall showed images of different offices, projects, and employees working across the world. Then the host paused for a moment. His smile grew wider. "And now," he said, "we have reached the most special moment of the evening." People leaned forward in their chairs. "For years, many of you have worked under the Horizon Dynamics name without ever meeting the person who started it all." A wave of whispers moved through the crowd. The visionary who built this company from the ground up and turned it into one of the fastest-growing technology groups in the world. The hall became completely quiet. "Tonight," the host continued, "that changes." He looked toward the side of the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the founder and CEO of Horizon Dynamics Group." There was a brief pause. Then he said the name clearly into the microphone. "Amara Okoye." At that exact moment, the stage lights suddenly turned on, and I walked onto the stage. The bright lights filled the room as I stepped forward calmly, wearing a black formal dress and walking with complete confidence toward the center microphone. For a second, the entire hall froze. The crowd looked confused, then shocked, because many people in the room recognized me. But no one looked more shocked than the three people sitting at that Novatech table. My father was halfway standing from his chair, staring at the stage like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. My mother's mouth slowly fell open. And Emika, his face turned completely pale. The woman standing on the stage, the founder they had been waiting to meet all night, was the same woman they had betrayed. For a few seconds after I walked onto the stage, the entire hall stayed completely silent. It was the kind of silence that happens when hundreds of people are trying to understand what they are seeing. Then the whispers started. People began looking at each other, pointing toward the stage, quietly asking the same question. "Is that really her?" Some employees had seen my photo before in internal reports, but many had never seen me in person. To them, the mysterious founder had always been just a name. But for three people sitting in the middle of the hall, there was no confusion at all. My parents knew exactly who I was. I looked across the room and my eyes landed on their table. My father was still half standing, frozen in place like someone had suddenly turned him into a statue. His face looked completely drained of color. The proud expression he had earlier was gone, replaced with pure shock. My mother looked even worse. Her hand slowly moved to cover her mouth, her eyes wide as she stared at the stage. I could almost see the moment when the truth fully reached her mind. The daughter she told to move on, the daughter she treated like she had nothing left, was standing on that stage as the CEO of the company they worked for. But the most dramatic reaction came from Emika. The confident smile he had earlier had completely disappeared. His face turned pale, and he looked like someone had just pulled the ground out from under him. His eyes kept moving between the stage and my parents, as if he was hoping someone would say this was some kind of misunderstanding. But there was no misunderstanding. The giant screen behind me now displayed the Horizon Dynamics logo along with my name and title, Founder and Chief Executive Officer. Around the hall, the whispers were growing louder. "Wait, that's Amara. Doesn't she look really young?" So she's the one who built the company. Employees from Novatech began glancing toward my parents' table. Some of them clearly recognized my father and mother from the office. Their confused looks slowly turned into curious ones. Because suddenly everything was starting to make sense. My father had spent years proudly telling people about his job at Novatech, but now the truth was standing right in front of him. The real owner of the company was his own daughter. And then there was Chioma. She was sitting beside Emeka, and her confident smile from the family dinner had completely disappeared. Her eyes looked panicked as she stared at the stage. She leaned slightly toward Emeka and whispered something quickly, but he didn't even respond. For the first time since all of this started, they looked afraid. Not angry, not proud, afraid. Because in that moment they finally understood something very important. The woman they had humiliated, ignored, and replaced was now the most powerful person in the room. After the event ended, the crowd slowly began to leave, still buzzing about the shocking appearance of the founder. My employees and executives were congratulating me quietly behind the stage, but I barely noticed. My eyes were already looking for the 3 people who had underestimated me for so long. My parents approached hesitantly. My mother's hand trembled slightly as she reached out, and my father's proud posture was gone, replaced by an awkward stiffness. They looked like children caught in the middle of something they didn't understand. We didn't know you were doing so well," my mother said softly, almost like she was afraid my words might strike her down. Her voice shook, and for a second I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I looked at them calmly, with a quiet steadiness I had developed over the years. "You never cared enough to ask," I replied simply. No anger, no tears, just truth. That one line seemed to hang in the air between us, heavier than any words I could have shouted. My father opened his mouth, probably to explain or apologize, but I just shook my head and walked away. There was nothing left to say. Chioma and Emeka were nowhere near my mind now. They were just small shadows in the past. Later I found myself alone on the rooftop of the building. The cool night air brushed against my face as I looked out over the Abuja skyline. The city lights sparkled like tiny stars, and the hum of the city felt distant, almost peaceful. For the first time in a long time I felt a sense of calm and satisfaction. I had built everything myself, from my company to my confidence, and no betrayal, no humiliation, and no stolen love could take that away. "They stole the man I thought I loved," I whispered to the wind, letting the words go. But they never realized they were already working for me. For the first time I smiled freely, knowing that I had won in a way they could never imagine. Everything they thought was control, power, and superiority had always been in my hands. And now nothing could take it away.